Hey guys, welcome back to the Practical Machine Learning series, and this is lecture 2 where we will be covering about data exploration using Pandas. So let's look at today's agenda. So guys, today's main aim is data exploration. We will look at what data exploration actually is and what are the different things that you can do while exploring your data. I will also be providing some resources at the end. So let's start today's session. So first thing first, what is data exploration? So data exploration refers to diving into the loaded data to get a feel of what it contains. So once you have loaded your data, you need to understand what this data is all about. So that thing you can do in data exploration. It's the first or initial step in data analysis. So every data analyst starts with this step because first they need to understand the data. Why it is useful? Because it uncovers characteristic, pattern, and potential problems loaded in data. This is because it is often messy. What happens is whenever you get raw data, it is often messy. By messy, I mean there may be missing values, there may be nan values, the data type may not be right. These are the issues that arise a lot in real world situations. So you need to first understand all these things and devise a strategy according. So let's now look at how to load our data. This is just a brief recap of whatever we have covered in the last session. So if you remember, we have loaded the load diabetes dataset from the sklearn, which returned us a bunch object which we converted into a data frame using h frame is equal to true parameter. Now this diabetes dataset again has a attribute called data which I have taken and loaded it into the data frame itself. Now if I run all these cells, you can see that we have all the features listed here as columns and rows as the individual values per column, and each individual value is called an observation for that particular feature. Now let's look at what are the first steps that we need to do in order to explore our data and get a feel for what our data is all about. Now, the first thing that you can do while exploring your data is examining the first few and last observations. But before that, we will check the type. This is kind of a sanity check so that you can be sure that you are working with data frame. So all these methods that I'm going to show you now will work accordingly. So you can see that our output has pandas core.frame.dataframe. That means that we already have a data frame. So that's good to go. Now, for checking first few observations, you can use df.head method. Make sure that you pass in this parenthesis because if you do like df.head, it will show something like this. And this is not very convenient to see. So that's why we pass in this parenthesis. And here by default, it says first 5 values only. You can see like 0 to 4 it says, right? So that means 5 values we have, but you can pass in any number of values, but make sure that it is the same number of rows that you have in your data. So let's say I want first 10 values. So I can do df.head and 10. Now here indexing starts with 0. So make sure that whatever you pass, if you want to include it, just pass in one more value from it. So here you can see like 0 to 10 here, right? So this is just a kind of hack that I want to show it to you. Now similarly, as you have head, you also have a method called tail, and by tail it means that you have last few entries that you can examine. So here if you see last 5 entries, again similar thing, you can pass in some value in the parenthesis and you will get like all the values excluding the value that you have provided. So you can use the same hack which I have showed you earlier. So these two things you can do. Next, you can explore the shape of data. By shape I mean number of rows and columns. Obviously you can do this earlier also, no issue with that. And you can see that it says 442, 10. Now let's interpret it. So here 442 refers to rows or the samples or observations that you see, and 10 refers to the column and it simply means features. Now once you have that, you can get all the column names. Now here it is not very helpful, but say you have 10,000 columns, so you can't see each and everything while printing your data frame, right? So what you can do is you can directly get the column name using the method which is provided. So df.columns, if you do, and make sure that this is not passed with this parenthesis because this is an attribute. One good thing to understand by attribute and method is that attribute will have no parenthesis at the end, which is kind of function calling, while your method will have. Okay, so this is very important to understand. You can see the document documentation, which I will provide later. You can refer to that. Okay. Now, if you see here, it says index, right? And our D type or data type is object. And these are all the columns that are present to this, right? But you can convert this into a list. So this is our list. And once you have this, it's much more better to see and look. So most of the time we try to do these things. Also, you need to understand what are all the column names representing. So basically, I have created this attribute information. By default, you also have DESCR, which will print the same thing and also more than those. And again, this is an attribute of the diabetes bunch object. Okay, make sure that this is a bunch object, and you can refer to that from the scikit-learn documentation. What I am going to do is I am just going to open my sklearn.load diabetes dataset documentation, which can directly be searched from sklearn.dataset diabetes. And here, if you see, we have all these things in a very good manner. So you can directly refer from here also. Anyways, just I wanted to show that. Now, once you have all the description and everything, we need to get the information about columns. And this is very important, guys, because this will help you navigate later on. So what all informations that you can get? You can get data frame base class, which is basically Pandas data frame class that we saw earlier. Column index, index of all the columns. Data type of all the columns, which is very essential because if you don't have same data type, which needs to be, you need to convert it. Number of null values in a column, basically the values which are not present. Number of rows and columns, almost we can get it from SAP itself. And the memory usage. This is very important because this will show you whether you need to optimize your data frame or not. Basically converting the default storage to different format like float 64 to float 32. So for that you can use df.info. Again, this is a method. That's why we will add the parentheses. Okay. So here you can see that we have our base class, the index range. Basically we have 422 entries. That means 422 rows, 0 to 441 indexing is there. And then number of data columns, how many? We have 10 columns in total. And you can see all the column. This has means index. Column means all the column names. Non-null count means all the columns which are non-null. Basically they have values present in it. You can see no null values are present because it says 442 non-null. If there is some discrepancy in some cases, like say it's 440, then that means that you have one missing value. You can later on inspect with that. And float 64 is our D type. And this makes sense because we have floating point values in the each of the column. Now D type by default it shows the aggregated D type. So this is float 64 and 10 means basically we have 10 columns. Memory usage is how much memory it is taking in our RAM. So that's it. Now once you get that, we get to the summary statistics. This is not a detailed summary statistics, just an overview, because in later parts you will be covering more ways in which you can take summary statistics. So let's head to that. Now if you see here, we have first df.describe. What it does is it gives you the summary statistics of everything. So you can see that all the columns are there and we have summary statistics like count, mean, standard deviation, mean 25%, 50%, 75% max. And why it is useful? Most of the things you can directly get, but one thing that you can do with this is outlier detection. So all you need to do is just check whether your minimum value and 25 percentile value, are they close enough? If they are close enough, that means you don't have outliers. Means basically those data which skew our data set. Here you can see that you have some values like minus 1.07 and minus 3.7. That means they are far apart. That means we have outliers in this. After that, for larger end, if your 75 percentile value and the maximum value are in close range, that means you don't have outliers, but else you will have outliers present in. Okay, so this is one of the thing that you can do from describe, because people don't know how to state it in interview. So that's why I covered this. Okay, now if you want to get some specific summary stats, you have this percentile method in it. You can see that here we have parameters like percentile, and it will take either numbers or list of numbers, and these all values means 5 percentile, 25 percentile, 75 percentile and 95 percentile. By the way, if you don't know what percentile is, I will suggest that please go and check it out. So if I do this df.describe and pass in this percentile and then a list of values in it, I will get all the percentile. Now you can see that earlier we have 25%, 50%, 75%. Here we have 5, 25, 50, 75 and 95%. That means we have successfully got our percentile values, and this is very helpful understanding the distribution of the data later on. Okay. Now if you want to include only specific set of data type, you can use the include method. Again, we have got this from here. If you select all, that means all will be returned, while if you have some specific data type, you can directly pass in it as list or an array if you come from C background, and you can see all the float 64 values. Since they are present in every column, everything is printed. But if I want to say exclude this particular value, I can use the exclude parameter, and again I have got this from this itself. Now this caused an issue because we don't have any object type present in our data set. Okay. Now sometimes it's very hard to get the descriptive statistics in this, so you can have your column and rows transposed. Think of earlier as matrix. So for that you can do df dot describe dot t. Dot t means basically transpose. Now it will be more readable, and only it's for readability purpose, nothing else. Like for age, your count is 442.0, mean is -2, standard deviation is something, and so on, right? So all these things you can do. So this is the very basic data exploration that you need to do. Here are some of the resources that can help you learn better. First resource is the reference notebook itself, which I will be providing in my Git repo. By the way, if you don't know, I have a GitHub repo which you can follow along. Here I have only uploaded the last lecture video, but later on, once we have completed this, I will be uploading the second notebook itself here. And we also have our Pandas documentation, where I want you to explore different methods which are present, like data frame.index, columns, t types, and so on. All you need to do is just click on this and just study and see how things work, because everything is not possible to be covered, right? You need to do some work, and that's your homework for now. So guys, that's all for today's lecture. I hope you will do your homework. We will meet in the next video. Till then, bye bye.